In a small and peaceful village called Umuachi, nestled between lush green hills and a sparkling river, lived a talented young potter named Ifeanyi. She was known far and wide for her incredible skill in crafting pots, each one a masterpiece of beauty and craftsmanship. But it wasn't just the pot's design that drew people to Ifeanyi's workshop, it was their power. It was said that anyone who owned one of Ifeanyi's pots would experience good fortune. Farmers who stored their grain in her pots enjoyed bountiful harvests. Traders who kept their money in her pots saw their wealth multiply. Families who placed her pots in their homes found peace and harmony. Ifeanyi's fame grew, and people traveled from neighboring villages, eager to purchase her magical creations. She became the pride of Umuachi, but Ifeanyi remained humble, greeting everyone with warmth and kindness. What no one knew, however, was the secret behind her pots. Ifeanyi's clay came from a hidden spring deep in the Inu forest, a sacred place protected by the spirits of the land. The clay infused with the blessings of the earth held the power to bring prosperity to anyone with a pure heart. Years ago, as a young girl, Ifeanyi had stumbled upon the spring while helping an old woman who had fallen on a forest path. The woman, who turned out to be a guardian spirit, had rewarded her kindness by revealing the location of the spring and entrusting her with its clay. But there was one rule: the clay must never be used for greed or harm, or its power would turn into a curse. Not far from Ifeanyi's bustling workshop was another potter named Okechukwu. Once a respected artisan in the village, Okechukwu's fortunes had declined since Ifeanyi's rise to fame. His pots, though functional, lacked the beauty and charm of Ifeanyi's creations. As he watched customers flock to her workshop day after day, jealousy burned in his heart. Why should she have all the success while I struggle? He grumbled. Okechukwu became obsessed with discovering Ifeanyi's secret. He began spying on her, watching her every move. One day, he noticed Ifeanyi leaving her workshop early in the morning, carrying an empty sack. She disappeared into the forest and returned hours later with the sack full of clay. This must be it, Okechukwu thought. Her clay is the source of her power. Determined to take the clay for himself, Okechukwu hatched a plan. One moonless night, Okechukwu crept to Ifeanyi's workshop with two of his accomplices. Silently, they broke the lock and entered, their lanterns casting eerie shadows on the walls. There, in a corner, was a large storage jar filled with the sacred clay. Its soft, rich texture gleamed faintly, as though it held a light of its own. "This is it," Okechukwu whispered, his eyes gleaming with greed. They quickly scooped the clay into sacks and fled into the night. The next morning, Ifeanyi awoke to find her workshop in shambles. The clay was gone. Her heart sank. Without the sacred clay, she couldn't make her pots, and worse, she feared what would happen if it was misused. That evening, as Ifeanyi sat outside her workshop, troubled and unsure of what to do, she heard a soft rustling in the trees. From the shadows emerged a familiar figure, the old woman she had helped years ago, the guardian of the sacred spring. "Ifeanyi," the woman said in a gentle but firm voice, "the clay has been stolen, and it is now in the hands of those who seek to use it for selfish purposes. If they succeed, the clay's power will turn dark, bringing misfortune instead of blessings." Ifeanyi's eyes filled with tears. "What can I do? They've taken everything." "You must retrieve the clay before it is too late," the woman said. "The clay must be returned to the spring within 7 days, or its power will be lost forever, and so will the blessings it brings to your village." The old woman handed Ifeanyi a small amulet carved from wood. "This will guide you on your journey, but you must rely on your wit and courage to succeed." Ifeanyi wasted no time. She packed a small bag with supplies and set off to track down Okechukwu and his accomplices. Her journey was not easy. She had to cross rivers, climb rocky hills, and navigate dark, tangled woods. Along the way, she encountered challenges that tested her resolve. At one point, she came across a large river with no bridge. As she stood on the bank, wondering how to cross, a giant fish surfaced and spoke. "Why do you travel, young potter?" "I must retrieve what was stolen from me," Ifeanyi replied. The fish nodded. Then I shall help you, for your pots have brought peace and prosperity to many. It swam to the other side, carrying Ifeanyi on its back. After days of travel, Ifeanyi finally reached Okechukwu's hideout, a rundown barn on the outskirts of a neighboring village. Peering through a crack in the wall, she saw him and his accomplices experimenting with the clay, trying to replicate her techniques. But the pots they made were warped and ugly, and no matter how much effort they put in, the clay resisted their touch. The clay won't work for them, Ifeanyi thought. Its power comes from purity of heart, not greed. Summoning her courage, she stepped into the barn. Okechukwu, she called out, her voice firm. Return what you have stolen. The men turned, startled. Okechukwu sneered. And why should I? You don't deserve to hoard all the success while the rest of us struggle. The clay's power is not meant for greed, Ifeanyi said. If you keep it, it will turn against you. Okechukwu laughed. We'll see about that. Ifeanyi realized she couldn't fight them with strength, so she relied on her wit. She pretended to offer a deal. I'll show you how to use the clay, she said, but only if you give me half of it back. Suspicious but desperate, Okechukwu agreed. Ifeanyi began demonstrating her technique, but as she walked, she whispered a silent prayer. Suddenly, the clay in Okechukwu's hands began to harden, turning into useless lumps of stone. Startled, he dropped it. What is happening? The clay knows your heart, Ifeanyi said. It will never work for you. Realizing he had been defeated, Okechukwu finally surrendered the remaining clay. With the clay in her possession, Ifeanyi raced back to the sacred spring. As she poured the clay into the water, the earth trembled, and the forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The old woman appeared once more, her face filled with pride. You have saved the clay and protected its power. Your courage and kindness will not be forgotten. Ifeanyi returned to her village a hero. She forgave Okechukwu, who vowed to change his ways and work honestly. Together they taught others in the village how to make pots, ensuring that everyone could benefit from the prosperity the clay brought. From that day on, Ifeanyi's workshop became a symbol of hope, community, and the power of doing what is right. When Ifeanyi returned to Umuachi with the clay restored to its sacred spring, she expected peace to return. Instead, she found her village in turmoil. Rumors of the clay's magical power had spread, and many villagers began to argue about who deserved to own the next pot. What makes Ifeanyi so special? Some muttered. Why should she be the only one to use the clay? Even those who had once praised Ifeanyi now demanded that the clay's location be revealed so they could use it for their own purposes. Others defended her, insisting that the clay's power belonged to someone pure of heart. The village elder, Papa Is, called for a meeting at the village square. Standing before the crowd, he raised his staff for silence. This clay has brought prosperity to us all because it was used wisely. But greed and jealousy will destroy our peace. Ifeanyi, what do you say to this? Ifeanyi stood, her voice steady but filled with sorrow. I have always used the clay to help the community, never for myself. If we fight over its power, it will bring only destruction. The clay is sacred, it cannot be used selfishly. But if the village believes otherwise, I am willing to step away. Her words left the crowd in stunned silence. As the village debated, Okechukwu watched from the edge of the crowd, guilt heavy in his heart. He remembered how he had let his jealousy consume him, nearly destroying Ifeanyi's legacy and the sacred clay. That night, he went to Ifeanyi's workshop. She was kneeling by her potter's wheel, her hands shaping a new pot with practiced grace. When she saw him, she paused but didn't speak. Ifeanyi, Okechukwu began, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to make things right. I was wrong to take the clay, and I want to help you protect it. Ifeanyi studied him for a moment, then nodded. If you truly want to help, there is something you can do. She explained her plan to restore unity to the village by creating a pot that would remind everyone of the clay's true purpose. Okechukwu listened intently, his heart lightening with hope. The next morning, Ifeanyi and Okechukwu gathered the villagers at her workshop. Before them stood a large, unfinished pot, her most ambitious project yet. "This is the pot of unity," Ifeanyi announced. "It will hold the stories, hopes, and dreams of everyone in the village. But I cannot complete it alone. Each of you must contribute to it, just as we must all contribute to the peace and prosperity of Umuachi." One by one, the villagers came forward, adding their own marks to the pot. A farmer carved an image of his fields. A trader etched the symbol of her wares. Children painted bright colors along the rim. Even Okechukwu contributed, carving a pattern of interlocking hands to symbolize cooperation. When the pot was finished, Ifeanyi placed it in the village square. "This pot will remind us that the clay's power comes not from magic alone, but from how we use it to uplift one another." The pot of unity quickly became a symbol of hope and reconciliation in Umuachi. People gathered around it to share stories, celebrate victories, and offer solutions to their problems. Ifeanyi returned to her work, crafting pots with renewed purpose. She also began teaching others her craft, ensuring that the art of pottery would live on in the village. Okechukwu became her most devoted student, learning not only the techniques of pottery but also the values of humility and generosity. Together, they started a new tradition. Every year, they would create a special pot and gift it to someone in the village who had shown kindness and selflessness. As for the sacred clay, Ifeanyi kept its location a secret, but she never used it selfishly. Instead, she worked with the villagers to find ways to share its blessings, ensuring that everyone could benefit from its magic without losing sight of its deeper purpose. In time, the story of Ifeanyi, Okechukwu, and the sacred clay spread beyond Umuachi, inspiring people far and wide to value kindness, unity, and the courage to do what is right. From that day on, Ifeanyi's workshop became a symbol of hope, community, and the power of doing what is right. The story of Ifeanyi and the magical clay was passed down through generations, a reminder that true success comes not from greed or envy, but from kindness, hard work, and the courage to do what is right. And so, the clay potter's secret became not just a tale of magic, but a lesson in how to shape a better world, one act of kindness at a time.